Welcome back to Threads of Truth, where real-life mysteries meet internet speculation.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into a case that is technically resolved, but in another way, it's profoundly unresolved when you look at the systemic failures behind it. We're talking about the murder of Leah Croucher.
That's right. Leah was just 19 years old from Milton Keynes in England, and she just vanished. One morning on her normal 2-mile walk to work.
February 15th, 2019.
Exactly. It was this completely routine, predictable morning that just exploded into this huge national missing person case. It gripped the UK because there were just no clues.
None. For 3.5 years, it was really the ultimate nightmare for investigators. You have a person who's just gone completely without a trace, despite this massive public effort to find her.
And then October 2022, the whole thing pivots with this really shocking, brutal discovery.
After all that time, after searching lakes and fields and woods, her remains are found less than a mile from her own home.
In the attic of a house.
In the attic of a house on Locksbear Drive.
So today, our mission isn't just to go over the facts of what happened. We're going to dig into that timeline, the prime suspect, a man named Neil Maxwell Key. And I think this is the crucial part. We have to look at the institutional failures that allowed a known wanted predator to just be at large, operating right under everyone's noses.
It's a story about a crime, yes, but it's really a story about how a system designed to protect people completely broke down.
Okay, so let's start with Leah herself. Let's unpack this. She was 19, quiet, had a structured life. She worked at a direct debit collection agency in a place called Knoll Hill.
Right. And her routine was, almost like clockwork. That's why the alarm was raised so quickly when she didn't show up.
She walked the same 2 miles every day.
Every single day.
Yeah.
And on that Friday, February 15th, 2019, she left her home at 6:15 in the morning, just like she always did.
And this route.
Yeah.
What did it look like? I mean, we're talking about a suburban area, but the geography is so important here.
It is. The route was a mix of things, some residential streets, normal footpaths, but it also included a long stretch right alongside First and Lake.
Okay, and that lake became a huge focus of the early search, didn't it?
A massive focus. The police, the public, everyone was focused on the lake, the paths around it, because it just seemed like the most logical place where someone could have seen something. Or something could have happened.
So she's walking her normal route. What's the last moment we can definitively place her? Where do we know for sure she was?
The last confirmed sighting is from a CCTV camera. It's around 8:16 in the morning, and she's seen on a street called Buzzacott Lane in Firston.
And on the footage?
She looks completely normal. Just walking, unhurried, on her way to work. Nothing seems out of place at all.
We always talk about the digital trail in these cases. What about her phone?
Well, that's the next and really the final concrete piece of evidence. Her mobile phone disconnects from the network at 8:34 a.m.
So that's just, 18 minutes after she was last seen on camera?
Exactly. Just 18 minutes. From 8:34 a.m. on, her digital footprint is gone. The phone never reconnects. That little window between 8.16 and 8.34, that's it. That's when everything happened.
An 18-minute window in a very small geographical area. And yet the investigation that followed was just immense, right? It covered the whole city.
Oh, it was staggering. I mean, we're talking over 5,000 house-to-house inquiries. The police put just about every resource they had into it from day one.
And they kept going back to that lake. I remember seeing news reports month after month of divers at Firston Lake.
They did. They searched it repeatedly.
Yeah.
Specialist divers, sonar equipment. I mean, when you don't have a body, concealment in water is always a high probability.
It's just incredible that the search was so wide, but the answer was, it was so close.
It really speaks to the unique and, I guess, horrific nature of the crime scene itself. It was hiding in plain sight.
And there was some early information that might have actually sent the investigation down the wrong path, weren't there? These unconfirmed sightings.
Yes. This was a huge complication early on. Between about 9:30 and 11:15 that morning, a few witnesses came forward to say they'd seen a woman who looked like Leah near Firston Lake.
And this woman was. She was upset.
That was the key detail. She was described as visibly upset and crying while she was on her phone.
Which would suggest she was still alive and maybe in some kind of personal distress well after her phone had supposedly gone dead at 8.34.
Precisely. It created this very powerful but ultimately false narrative. It suggested that maybe Leah had chosen to disappear, or that she was meeting someone and had a bad argument. It pulled a lot of police resources and attention towards the lake, and maybe away from the idea of an immediate abduction on her route.
So for 3 years, there's just nothing. This drought of leads. And all that time, the family is just living through this absolute nightmare.
Devastated, doesn't even begin to cover it. The family said publicly that her disappearance had destroyed our entire family. It's just an unimaginable constant state of not knowing.
And the tragedy just compounds, doesn't it, with her older half-brother, Hayden?
Yes. This is just an incredibly painful layer to the story. 9 months after Leah vanished, Hayden took his own life. He was only 24.
And the family directly linked it to the stress of Leah being missing.
They did. They said the ordeal and the despair of it all was a contributing factor. It just shows the long, devastating ripple effect of a single crime.
So after 3 years of nothing, we get to October 2022. What was the tip-off that finally broke the case wide open?
It came from a call about a specific address, Lockspear Drive in Ferdston. And the crucial thing here is that this house is less than a mile from where Leah lived. It's incredibly close to where she was last seen.
Why wasn't this house on the list? I mean, with 5,000 inquiries, why was this one missed?
It was a tricky one. The house was unoccupied at the time. The owners lived abroad and just used it as a holiday home.
So it wasn't a primary residence.
Right. And with no obvious immediate connection to Leah, it didn't really fit the criteria for a high priority mandatory police search early on. It just fell through the cracks.
And the discovery wasn't a police raid, was it? It was almost by accident.
It was completely accidental. The owners had asked a handyman to go check on the property. Neighbors had been reporting a foul smell for some time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And this handyman went into the attic to investigate. And that's when he made the discovery.
What did he find exactly?
He found human remains, Leah's rucksack, and her personal belongings, all concealed inside plastic bags in the attic space.
So the concealment was deliberate.
Very deliberate. The use of bags, the location in a rarely used attic and an empty house, it all points to a calculated effort to hide the body and avoid detection for as long as possible. Forensics then confirmed the remains were Leah Croucher.
Was there a clear cause of death after all that time?
No. Unfortunately, because of the level of decomposition, the official cause of death was ruled as undetermined. And that's an important point we'll come back to, because the final inquest had to rely on other evidence to figure out what happened.
And almost immediately, police named a prime suspect, Neil Maxwell. What was his connection to that house?
The connection was direct and chilling. Maxwell was a convicted sex offender, and he'd been hired to do maintenance work on that Lockspear Drive property.
So he had keys.
He had keys. He was the only person with access to that house during the periods when Leah disappeared. He had the means and the opportunity to use that specific location.
But he died, didn't he? Why couldn't they just go and question him?
Because he was already dead. Neil Maxwell died by suicide in April of 2019, just 2 months after Leah vanished.
2 months?
Yeah. So his death, long before her body was found, meant there was no chance for a confession or an interview or any kind of direct accountability.
And this is where the story shifts, isn't it? It's not just about Maxwell. It's about the fact that at the time Leah went missing, he was already on the run from the police.
That is the pivotal, horrifying fact of this case. When Leah was murdered in February 2019, Neil Maxwell was a fugitive. He was wanted for a completely separate sexual assault that he'd committed 3 months earlier in November 2018.
So a known high-risk sex offender wanted for another serious crime was just living and working with access to an empty house right on Leah's daily route.
It's the definition of a catastrophic operational breakdown. And that's what we really need to analyze.
Okay, so the discovery in that attic completely changes everything. For 3 years, the public, the online communities, they've been speculating about everything under the sun.
Right. The theories ranged from her running away to having an accident to being taken by a stranger to a completely different location. But the discovery at Lockspear Drive it narrowed the focus instantly.
It all came down to those 18 minutes and to Neil Maxwell.
Exactly. It became a question of opportunity. How did he encounter her in that tiny window of time?
So let's look at the main theories, the one that the police and the inquest ultimately landed on. What is that?
That's what we could call theory A, encounter and forced entry.
Yeah.
This is the most supported scenario. The belief is that Maxwell, who knew he had access to this empty, secure house, saw Leah on her walk.
Either by chance or because he'd noticed her routine.
Right. And he somehow forced her into the Lockspear Drive property where he killed her and then concealed her body in the attic. The fact that her phone went dead so quickly supports this idea of a sudden, violent interruption to her journey.
But online, there were other ideas floating around, especially early on. What about the theory that she might have known her attacker?
That was a popular one, Theory B, a planned meeting gone wrong. You see this a lot in missing persons cases. The idea that Leah might have been secretly meeting someone, maybe someone she met online, and that the meeting just took a tragic turn.
Did the police find any evidence at all to support that?
Absolutely none. They did a deep dive into all her digital communications. They talked to her family, her friends. There was nothing to suggest she was planning to meet anyone that morning. And frankly, the discovery of her remains in a house linked only to a known predator like Maxwell really puts that theory to rest.
Okay, what about a completely random attack? Just the crime of pure opportunity by a stranger?
That was Theory C, a random opportunistic attack. The problem with that theory is the concealment. The initial encounter could have been random, sure. Maxwell sees her walking alone. But what he does next isn't random at all.
Right. He doesn't panic and leave her somewhere obvious.
No, he takes her to a specific property that he knows he has access to, a place he can lock up and walk away from. That suggests a level of planning, or at least a high degree of criminal thinking in the aftermath of the attack.
And the online discussion wasn't just about how she was killed. It was so focused on why she wasn't found. People were obsessed with the search protocols.
This is where the public criticism got really sharp. The big question was, how could this house on Lockspear Drive not be on a high-priority search list for 3.5 years?
What are the rules on that? Can police just search any empty house in the area?
No, it's not that simple.
Uh-huh.
Police need what's called reasonable grounds to force entry into a private home, even an empty one. And in the beginning, there was nothing connecting Leah to that specific house or to Neil Maxwell. He wasn't a known associate of hers.
So they would have needed a warrant, and they just didn't have the evidence to get one.
Exactly. But the argument people made online, and it's a fair one, is that Maxwell's status as a wanted fugitive who was known to be in that area should have been a massive red flag. It should have lowered that legal bar for a search, but the dots just weren't connected.
And people were also fixated on the CCTV coverage or the lack of it, the blind spots.
Yes, because suburban CCTV is a patchwork, isn't it? It's a mix of business cameras and private doorbell cams. There were crucial gaps in the coverage along her final path.
So we can't see the moment of abduction.
We can't. We don't know if she was grabbed on Buzzicott Lane itself or lured off the path towards a house. If there had been a camera covering just another 50 yards, the whole picture might have been clear from day one.
Culturally, this case really tapped into a deep primal fear, didn't it? The idea of safety and routine being shattered.
It absolutely did. It's the horror of the everyday disappearance. If you can just vanish on your normal walk to work, walk you've done hundreds of times, then that feeling of safety we all rely on is, well, it's just an illusion.
And the fact that she was found so close to home after so long really sparked a conversation about how these searches are even done.
It really questioned the whole methodology. It showed how a perpetrator can use the very fabric of a normal, quiet suburban street as a form of camouflage. The case became a powerful argument for shifting from just physical, grid-based searches to more intelligence-led searches focused on known high-risk individuals in the area.
Okay, so let's shift to the official analysis. The inquest in June 2024 finally brought a legal conclusion to the case. What was the formal ruling?
The inquest ruled that Leah Croucher was unlawfully killed by Neil Maxwell on or around February 15, 2019. And it went further, stating the likely manner of death was an unwarranted sex attack.
I want to pause on that. You said earlier the cause of death was officially undetermined. So how can a court then rule it was unlawfully killed? What's the legal reasoning there?
That's a great question. It's a key distinction. A verdict of unlawfully killed can be reached even without a specific forensic cause of death if the circumstantial evidence is overwhelming.
And in this case, it was.
Completely. You have her remains deliberately concealed in a property that only a known violent sex offender had access to, an offender who then took his own life. The concealment itself is evidence of a criminal act. The jury or coroner only needs to be sure on the balance of probabilities, and here, the probability was incredibly high.
And the investigators added this really powerful and just heartbreaking detail about Leah herself.
They did. It's a detail that says so much about her final moments. They made a point of stating that Leah had a black belt in martial arts.
So she would have fought back.
Absolutely. The implication is that she would have fought back fiercely. This wasn't a passive victim. It paints a picture of a violent struggle, which supports the inquest's conclusion of a sex attack.
But this entire tragedy, it all hinges on the 3 months before she was killed, the failure to catch Neil Maxwell.
This is the absolute heart of the matter. The timeline is just devastating. Maxwell commits a sexual assault in November 2018. He becomes a wanted man, a high-risk fugitive. And yet he stays on the run until his death in April 2019, which covers the entire period when he killed Leah.
And the police tried to get him, didn't they? The sources say there were multiple attempts.
Multiple is an understatement. The number is genuinely shocking. Police made a total of 18 attempts to arrest Neil Maxwell before Leah disappeared. 18 separate failed attempts. This isn't just one mistake. It's a complete systemic failure of law enforcement and offender management.
How does someone evade police 18 times? What was he doing? It suggests he was pretty skilled at this.
He was. The sources show he used a number of deliberate tactics to stay hidden. He used false names, for one. He also completely changed his appearance, grew a long beard, lost a lot of weight so he didn't match his old photos.
And he was mobile.
Very. He would alter his cars to avoid things like automatic license plate readers. He was basically a ghost, exploiting all the little gaps between police databases and jurisdictions.
So this is more than just bad luck. This points to a breakdown in how these agencies work together, doesn't it?
It has to be. You've got the probation service, who are supposed to be monitoring him as a registered sex offender, and you've got the police who are trying to execute a warrant for a new crime, for 18 attempts to fail. It suggests the information sharing was poor, the intelligence was slow, and he was just able to stay one step ahead. The system was defeated by fairly basic evasion tactics.
The implication is just chilling. This murder was preventable.
Completely. If he'd been caught on attempt number 1 or 5 or even 17, Leah Croucher would still be alive. The failure of the system gave him the freedom to operate, to have access to that house, and to commit this awful crime.
And even with the inquest's conclusion, there are still some big questions left unanswered, aren't there?
There are. The biggest one is still the how. How did he actually intercept her? Did he lie and wait for her, knowing her routine? Or was it just a terrifying split-second opportunity as she walked past the house? We have no witnesses, no camera footage of that moment.
And the other big question goes right back to the system. Why wasn't that house searched?
That's the most disturbing operational question. How did the system fail to connect the dots between a high-risk fugitive, Neil Maxwell, and the property he had keys to, Locksbear Drive? Why wasn't that link flagged as a top priority in a local missing person search? The answer to that is crucial if we want to prevent this from happening again.
Did the inquest do anything to force changes?
It did. This is one of the most important outcomes. The coroner issued what's called a Prevention of Future Deaths report.
And what does that do exactly? What power does it have?
A PSD report is a formal statutory notice. It's sent to organizations, in this case the police and probation services, and it legally compels them to review their procedures where there's a risk that more deaths could occur if they don't.
So it's forcing them to fix the gap.
It's forcing them to address the failures in data sharing, in how they track high-risk fugitives, and especially in making sure that any property linked to a wanted offender is immediately cross-referenced in any major local investigation. It's about closing the loopholes that Maxwell slipped through.
So we have the truth about what happened to Leah, but we also have this very harsh truth about the system that was supposed to protect her.
Exactly. The justice system solved the crime, but the investigation into the crime exposed a far more urgent and chilling lesson about institutional failure.
The story of Leah Croucher, in the end, it gives us an answer. We know who did it, and we know where. But it leaves us with this really difficult question about public safety and about these huge gaps in governance. It really highlights how important it is to hold these systems accountable.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, that the infrastructure of justice, the coordination, the data sharing, the search protocols, that's not abstract stuff. It's directly connected to the safety of someone just walking to work. And the price for getting it wrong is, well, it's catastrophic.
So we leave you today with this thought. The true test of a justice system isn't just in its ability to solve a crime after it's happened, but in its capacity to prevent it from happening in the first place. And we have to keep demanding that our institutions learn from tragedies like this one to make sure Leah Croucher's memory leads to real, life-saving change. Next week, we're looking into the disappearance of District Attorney Ray Gricar, a man who drove away one morning and left behind a laptop, a riverbank, and decades of unanswered questions.
Join us next time for another deep dive into the unexplained.